Hi everyone, welcome to my first doll customization video. I've been watching some doll customization videos for like years now, and I've always wanted to do my own, so let's just get started. So this is my design. I wanted to do something really fun, colorful, with lots of accessories. This very like scenecore kind of girl, and I really wanted to do like big pants and sculpted shoes and make her a hat. The design is based off some stuff I did in school last semester, and it's gonna be super fun! So this is the doll body that I'm going to be using. My friend Coco very graciously already unplugged this and cleaned off the face for me. It is just a regular bratz doll, and it is missing its shoes, which is fine. There's a little bit of posability in it, like a little like joints, but not too much, but you know, there's a lot to work with here. So the first thing that we're going to do is take her measurements, because this is pretty much the first thing that we need to do to start making her patterns. So here I am just very roughly taking her measurements that I will use later on to make the patterns. Turns out that if you have like any kind of pattern making experience, making doll patterns is like really easy because it's like 1/100th of the same scale of like an actual pattern. Here I'm just starting to trace out a bodice pattern because that will be what I use to make pretty much every other pattern in this thing. For the hoodie and for the shirt, you just want to make a bodice pattern to start, and then I can modify it otherwise to make whatever I want. And I add a little, about 1/4 of an inch of a seam allowance, and apparently I did not film part of the other thing, but here I am. I traced out the bodice and the sleeve, which I made off screen, I guess, and I'm just modifying it here to kind of fit the hoodie pattern, so it's a lot more baggy, a lot more interesting shapes, and just testing that it fits on the doll. I guess I didn't film this part, but to make the hood, I just kind of traced the head and tried to approximate the shape of a hood pattern out of it. And now that we have our pattern done, we can start working with our fabric. So I decided to go with this minky kind of fabric, some cotton, these denims, and make it just a cute little plush hoodie. To make the front design of the hoodie, I trace out some hearts and decorate them to make them look like the design that I want. Here I'm using fabric Mod Podge just to kind of glue this trim around the back of the red heart part to make the little roughly come up part, and you know, it doesn't have to fit perfectly, but it looks good. I use fabric Mod Podge again to put the applique on the front of the hoodie, and then I decide actually I want to make this out of denim, so I take it off and I start over and I cut out new pieces for the part of the front of the sweatshirt and re-glue the applique to the front here, as well as adding some pockets out of the shag fluffy fabric. For the sleeves, I'm cutting out rectangles of purple minky fabric and gluing them onto the top of the sleeve so that it creates the stripes. I'm just going to sew the hood around like this, and it kind of fits the doll head, but it doesn't really matter because it's gonna be down anyway, so we're just gonna go with it. We're gonna sew the shoulder parts and the armholes next. I saw Dollightful do this once, and it worked really well, so it's out like this. Normally I would do the sleeves a different way, like if it was a full-size thing, but with dolls this worked perfectly. And here we just attach the hood to the neck hole, which looks awesome. The zipper, I decided to use this cat food tag to make the zipper pull look a lot bigger, so I just use a jump ring to attach that to the zipper, and then I'm going to use hot glue to just attach it to the front parts of the hoodie. Finally, I'm going to sew up the sides of the sleeves and the bodice together in one nice stitch from the inside out, and when I flip it inside out, the hoodie's almost done. The last thing to do is add a waistband to the bottom, which is just like a super easy one round stitch, and then the hoodie is done. Yay! And we tested on her and she looks really, really, really cute. Next up is her crop top. I'm going to be using these pink ribbed knit fabrics that I also have scraps of. To make the pattern for this, we're tracing the front bodice piece that we made earlier, and we're just cropping it to be a little smaller, to have a little heart on it, and give it this mock neck. I'm using fabric Mod Podge here again to seal the edges of the cutout and to create the hem at the bottom. Off screen, I sewed it together just like I did the sweatshirt, and I added 2 little pieces of Velcro onto the back so that we can attach it to her. Yay, it fits. The heart is a little big, but like you can't see your boobs or anything, so it's okay. So let's move on to the pants. I found these at a thrift store. I got really lucky and I found like pretty much perfect Barbie doll pants at a store. They're a little bit big on her, but we're gonna be able to bring them in. And I decided I wanted them to be a lot more blue than they are, so here I am dip dyeing them in RIT synthetic dye. And 15 minutes later, I rinse it out and leave her to dry for about 24 hours. While we wait for the pants to dry, let's make the hat. I'm going to use this minky green fabric and this pink taffeta to create the self fabric and the lining by gluing them together with fabric Mod Podge and creating a double-sided fabric. To make the pattern, I kind of winged it. I just kind of traced the head a little bit and then did the shape that I knew was correct for my big hat pattern, but as you will see in a little bit, it is definitely way too small for the head, and I even realized this as I'm about to cut it out. So realizing that it's way too small, I draw a little bit outside of the edges but still keeping the same pattern. To make the eyes, I just paint these 3 tiny buttons with half white acrylic and half black acrylic. I use blickrylic matte. It is so opaque, I love it. And then to make the horns, I just felt them with a single needle and some pink felt. The hat pattern has these kind of built-in darts so that when you sew it like this and turn it out on the inside, it'll be like a little dome and fit the head. As you can see, it is still not big enough, which was very frustrating. So what I decided to do was just take out the stitches, cut out another rectangle of this fabric, and just stitch it in on the middle seam, and it seems to work fine. It's just a little extension. We finished the hat hand sewing the flaps onto it and then hot gluing the horns onto the top of the head. Alright, let's go back to the pants. First, I iron them out to make them flat as nice for painting, and then I coat them with white acrylic paint everywhere that I want to add more color. Then I go in with more acrylic paint in orange and yellow to get the colors that I want. And I remember that I have this really vibrant blue jacquard fabric that is like literally the color of the pants that I want to do. So I kind of go over the pants because the dye, it didn't really work out that well. It's probably my fault for not keeping it in there long enough. But whatever, because the jacquard saves the day. Yay! I am also outlining and cleaning up some of the edges with Posca markers, which are lifesavers. To make the belt straps, I'm using this weird like PVC vinyl type fabric that I have, cut out 2 rectangles from it and hot glue them to these key rings that I then make little straps and glue them to the pants. Yay, they look really good. I'm really happy with them. Finally, we can move on to the head and face. I made these yarn weft hairs off screen and I am just hot gluing them on. I'm sure there's a better glue that you can use for doing this, but hot glue worked fine for me. Right here, I realized like, oh shit, if I want to add the ears to it, like the big ears that I do in my drawings, I better do that right now. So I wrap up the hair that I have on her already, and then I use epoxy sculpt to sculpt on the ears. Also, I should mention, if you're using epoxy sculpt or like sanding anything or whatever, you should probably use like gloves and protection and stuff. I just didn't because I'm stupid. Now that the ears are on her and I went back and made more yarn wefts, I can continue finishing her hair. Literally everything I know I learned from watching just like Dollightful and Hextian and Moonlight Jewel. So the hair weft thing, I was doing the thing where you fold it back, and then here I am tying her hair up and securing it with this scrap piece of fabric, just like Dollightful does when she's about to go spray the face with MSC. I sprayed it with MSC off camera because I needed to use both my hands to hold the doll and spray, but here I am just applying the first few layers of pastels to add some color to her face, and I'm also doing the first layers of acrylic and skin tone onto the ears. And here I am doing the first layer of the eyes, and I really wanted them to be big and bright and really bold, just like the drawing that I did. I wanted to make it as accurate to the drawing as possible while also being like, you know, kind of cute and stuff. I am kind of happy with the end product. I think I could have done a lot better, but I definitely overworked it a little bit by the end, which is fine. I think I would have wished that I didn't fill in the eyes at the end, and I wish I could have kept them kind of open like this, but you know, learning experience for the next doll. Like the third layer of MSC and layering everything on, I go back in with gouache to fill in the irises and make the blacks pop a lot more. Finally, I finish her face with putting a little bit of gloss varnish on the top, and then eventually I just decide that maybe her whole face will look nice glossy, which I regret now, but you know, again, learning. So while she is drying, we can finally begin sculpting the shoes. This is going to be the most fun part for me personally. I start by filling out her legs with some air dry clay so that they'll match up with the shoe. And then to create the shape of the shoe, I take some sculpting wire that I have. I don't even really remember what I have this for, but I took some wire and I just made up the basic shapes of the shoes based on the drawings that I did and attached them to the legs using more wire and clay. After the wire shoes are attached, I fill them in with more air dry clay, and I'm going to leave it out to dry for probably 24 hours or so. Then the next day, it was dried and pretty much entirely cracky and flaking and unusable. Boo-hoo, whatever, it's time for epoxy sculpt. I go back in with a bunch of epoxy sculpt and just work on top of the air dry clay. It actually works out pretty well because I used a lot less epoxy sculpt that I would have used if I didn't have the air dry clay. So it served as like a base, which is fine. And also the legs broke off because clearly the clay was not stable enough. So here I am, I can finally start sculpting the shoes. It's like okay that the legs broke off because it made it a lot easier to sculpt the shoes on. So everything works out for a reason. I used some scrap cardboard that I have from a Cosmic Brownie box to create the base of the shoes, and then I use hot glue to glue them on. So this way it'll stay flat and the shoes will actually be like wearable and she can stand flat. Then I can finally begin sculpting the shoes, featuring Ravioli. You can just see her, and I'm just using epoxy sculpt, a lot of water, and some sculpting tools to make the shoes. The shoes? Not going to lie, they look pretty baller. The next step is to sand the fuck out of them. So this is me doing that with a nail file, and then off screen I sanded them a lot more with a nicer nail file. So, you know, this is just a taste of it, but I spent like hours sanding them down just like to perfection. And then when I coated them with gesso, they look like this. Now for the really fun part, I finally get to paint the shoes. I am mostly using a mixture of neon blickrylic paint and the matte white blickrylic paint. The neon is like not super opaque, so it took a few layers to get on there, but the matte white is super awesome, and if you just mix in a little bit of it, it makes it super opaque, so that's what I did, and this is the finished shoe. Woo! Now the really tricky part is reattaching them to her legs, and she needs to have a little extra height on her so that the pants will fit. What I do is I reattach a wire to the end of the legs, and then I somehow like combine them together, I don't know, with pliers and just like wrapping it around like knots of wire and stuff, and then I fill it in with hot glue and super glue to make sure that it like does not go anywhere, and I just do this on both legs. They also dried at a little bit of an angle, so she's going to have her knees bent and her back up a little bit to look like she's standing up straight, but that's fine. I think that also gives it a little character. I'm personally bow-legged, so having a bow-legged character is, you know, it adds a little bit of me into it. This is just me sanding the legs and coating it with white acrylic paint to then match the skin tone. My Frankenstein creation is almost complete. Now we can finally start styling her hair. So I first start with just combing it all out and trying to get it into like the basic shape that I want before going in and cutting it and trying to use, I tried to do the eyebrow razor trick, which apparently makes them look more natural, whatever, but it kind of just looked like shit. So I went in with scissors and I cut it bluntly, and I kept cutting it shorter and shorter until I got the length that I wanted. Then I decided to do another trick that I learned watching more creators, pretty much Hextian and Dollightful for sure, which is to heat up a piece of like metal. I think they use metal chopsticks, but I just used like the same piece of wire that I was using earlier for the shoes. And I try to like curl her hair up a little bit, and then I use a knife to try to flatten everything down. It's pretty fun. It looks okay, but it worked. The real test is to see if the hat will fit on her head with the hair. It's a snug fit, but it works, and it's kind of cute. Finally, we can start dressing her up. How exciting! Except, psych, because I just realized that I have no idea how I'm gonna put the pants on because the shoes are too big and they can't go over her head. So what I decided to do is that I have to cut open the pants and like wrap them around her and then re-stitch them up so that they're on her permanently. I was never intending to change the clothes on this doll anyway. I was kind of picturing it as like a I don't know, a sculpture or something. So I'm not too pressed about this, but I know some people really like to like change the change the clothes on their doll customs. So that would be an issue for this, but not for me. Now that she is finally dressed, we can start making the accessories, which actually, I know I said that the shoes were going to be the best part, but this is the best part. I have some chains, I have all of my jewelry making stuff, I have this clear chain that looks pretty much exactly like the one in the illustration, I have all my candy materials, and we're just going to go a little hog wild. Give her a little elastic belt to attach everything, and then for the charms, I have all these little shrinky dink charms left over from other projects, so I'm just going to use these and attach them to the clear chain to make the big chain that she is wearing in the drawing. I also give her a green chain as a like layering accent, and I make her a candy chain, and I give her a little green candy bracelet and a tiny little necklace with a little bead on it that I thought was super cute. And with that, we are done! She's a fucking supermodel! I am so in love with her. This was so much fun to do, and it turned out pretty much exactly the way I wanted, and I'm really, really, really happy with it. And, oh my god, she's just such a queen. And I really hope you liked the video. She is now living on the top of my shelf, and she will be there indefinitely unless someone wants to buy her or something, because I don't have enough space for her. So thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. Bye. Stick around because I'm going to do more doll customs. Okay, I love you. Oh, check me out on Twitter and Instagram and wherever else, mostly on Twitter, and my website, elenafortune.com. You will not regret it. It's a bunch more of this stuff, so please subscribe and follow me if you like this video. Okay, I love you. Goodbye.